People with no friends often carry these hidden Jungian traits, a rare kind of depth. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung once said, "In today's world, where social circles often define worth, those who walk alone are often misunderstood, yet within their solitude lies an extraordinary depth. These people aren't broken or incomplete. They're tuned to a rare frequency that few can truly comprehend." In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore the hidden Jungian traits that shape such rare soul's traits that reveal inner strength, depth, and spiritual awakening. As you listen, reflect on your own journey. Do you see yourself in these signs? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's grow together toward greater self-awareness and peace. 1. Authenticity over approval. People with few or no friends often live guided by the quiet authority of their soul, rather than the noise of social approval. They do not mold themselves to fit the expectations of others because they have reached a stage in their spiritual awakening where authenticity becomes more important than belonging. The deeper they dive into their inner world, the less interested they become in shallow conversations, false harmony, or conditional acceptance. As Carl Jung observed, the more one returns to their own being, the smaller their circle becomes. This is not rejection of the world, it is liberation from illusion. These individuals no longer crave validation because their worth no longer depends on how many people surround them, but on how aligned they are with their inner truth. Living authentically means facing both the light and the shadow within. People who walk this path know that true spirituality is not about pretending to be pure. It's about integrating every aspect of oneself with honesty and compassion. They stop chasing approval because they realize that every time they hide their truth, a part of their soul dims. Through solitude, they begin to hear the voice of their higher self more clearly. They learn that silence is not emptiness, but sacred space, where the universe whispers guidance. While others avoid being alone out of fear, these individuals find peace in it. Solitude becomes their teacher, refining their energy, sharpening their intuition, and grounding their sense of purpose. As their consciousness deepens, they begin to sense energy on a more subtle level. They can feel when someone's words and intentions are misaligned. They no longer engage in gossip, drama, or relationships that drain their energy, because their spirit naturally rejects anything that lowers their vibration. This is a mark of spiritual wisdom. They move through life not seeking to be understood, but to stay true. The journey of spiritual awakening teaches them to recognize that not all connections are meant to last, and not all companionships are aligned with their higher path. What may appear as isolation from the outside is often expansion from within, as their soul grows beyond the boundaries of superficial existence. Their authenticity gives them a quiet magnetism. They attract others who live with the same depth, those who understand the language of silence and the beauty of truth. Yet even in connection, they maintain inner freedom. They do not need others to complete them, for they have already found home within themselves. Spirituality, for them, is not about escaping the world, but living in it with integrity. They have discovered that when they stop chasing people, life naturally brings them those who resonate with their energy. When they no longer seek approval, they begin to attract genuine love. every act of authenticity becomes an offering to their higher self. Every step taken in truth becomes an act of courage. The more they honor who they are, the lighter they feel, as if the weight of pretension slowly dissolves. They realize that having few or no friends does not mean they are unloved. It means they are evolving. They are choosing peace over performance, purpose over popularity, and depth over distraction. This is the rare kind of strength that only those on a true spiritual awakening path can understand. The strength to stand alone, guided not by the applause of the world, but by the wisdom of the soul. If this message resonates with your soul, take a moment to honor your authenticity. Comment below, "I choose authenticity over approval," to affirm your commitment to living as your true self. 2. Solitude as a path to self-discovery. Solitude is not a punishment. It is an invitation to meet the deepest layers of yourself. When you walk alone, you are not rejecting the world. You are simply returning to the essence of who you are beyond all noise, all labels, and all expectations. In the quiet, when the voices of society fade, you begin to hear the whisper of your own truth. You start to see the difference between what the world told you to be and what your soul has always known you are. This is not isolation, it is refinement. It is the sacred moment when you stop being shaped by the external and start being guided by your inner wisdom. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Those who live in solitude are often the ones awakening not from life, but into life. They are the ones who dare to confront themselves fully, to sit with their shadows, and to find peace in their own company. They no longer chase validation, for they understand that true worth is born from inner alignment, not external approval. In solitude, you stop running toward others to fill your emptiness and instead begin to fill yourself with presence, awareness, and love. That is where spirituality truly begins, when you realize that peace is not something you find out there, but something you cultivate within. Solitude sharpens your perception. You start to sense energy, not just words. You recognize the difference between people who feed your soul and those who drain it. You learn to walk away quietly from what no longer serves your spirit, because you have learned the beauty of being enough for yourself. This stage of spiritual development is sacred. It is the phase when the universe shields you from distractions so that your inner foundation can grow strong. While others may misunderstand your silence, you begin to understand that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. In this stillness, something profound awakens. Creativity flows like a river. Insight deepens like roots, and your heart begins to expand with compassion and clarity. You stop fearing solitude because you realize it's not emptiness, it's space. Space for healing, for listening, for aligning with your higher purpose. The person who embraces solitude becomes a vessel of peace, radiating quiet strength that needs no explanation. They embody depth, not noise, truth, not performance. To walk alone is not to be lonely, it is to be whole. It is to know that your path may not be crowded, but it is divinely guided. You begin to live from the inside out, led by intuition instead of impulse, grounded in faith instead of fear. And in that sacred quiet, you discover what all spiritual seekers eventually learn, that the greatest companionship you will ever have is the presence of your own awakened soul. 3. Emotional and energetic discernment. People with few or no friends often carry a kind of emotional and energetic discernment that most of the world cannot see. They are not distant because they are cold or judgmental, but because they feel life more deeply than others. They sense energy before words, intentions before actions, and truth before explanation. This level of awareness is not something they learned. It's something they were born with, a form of spiritual wisdom that grows stronger as they evolve. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For these people, becoming authentic means being selective about where they place their energy, who they allow near their hearts, and what kind of vibrations they let into their space. Their small circle is not a sign of emptiness. It's a reflection of their high standards for emotional honesty, mutual respect, and genuine resonance. You might notice that when such people walk into a room, they instantly read the energy without a single word being spoken. It's not judgment, it's intuition. Their inner compass knows who is aligned with truth and who is hiding behind masks. They can feel when someone's smile carries tension, when a conversation feels heavy, or when a person's words don't match their frequency. That sensitivity, though often misunderstood, is their greatest protection. It's what keeps them from staying in places that drain them, or with people who disguise manipulation as kindness. Jung believed that as one becomes more conscious, their circle naturally shrinks, not out of arrogance, but necessity. The more awakened your spirit becomes, the less you tolerate anything that feels false or forced. Solitude, then, becomes a sanctuary rather than a punishment, a space where your energy can breathe and your soul can speak. These individuals don't sever ties out of pride. They simply stop feeding what no longer grows. They choose depth over distraction, peace over popularity, and authenticity over approval. Their relationships are built not on convenience, but on frequency. They crave conversations that nourish the mind, silences that feel comfortable, and connections that honor both truth and boundaries. They've learned that not everyone deserves access to their energy, because energy is sacred currency. It shapes your life far more than words ever could. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Through their discernment, these people bring the unconscious to light. They see through charm to intention, through noise to truth, through illusion to essence. Their path may appear lonely, but in truth, it is rich with meaning. They are not running from people, they are returning to themselves. Every time they choose silence over chaos, they refine their frequency. Every time they walk away from what feels off, they protect the sacred harmony of their inner world. In a society addicted to validation and constant connection, such self-trust is revolutionary. It takes strength to say no without guilt, to honor your intuition even when others don't understand, and to embrace solitude as a sign of alignment rather than absence. These souls embody what spiritual wisdom truly means: the ability to stay centered in truth, to recognize energy as the language of the soul, and to guard that energy fiercely, not out of fear, but out of love for who they are becoming. Now, take a deep breath and center your energy. Feel the calm within you. Open your heart to clarity, to truth, and to the strength of discernment that protects your spirit. Repeat after me. I trust my intuition, and I only allow peaceful energy into my life. 4. inner sovereignty, and psychological maturity. They carry within them a sacred form of strength that does not need to be seen or approved by others to exist. It is a quiet fire that burns deep within their soul, guiding them through life without the need for validation or applause. Their foundation is built upon values that come from within, not from the ever-shifting expectations of society. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are," and that truth lives vividly inside them. While others may chase acceptance, they follow their own inner compass, walking paths that are not always popular, but always authentic. This independence is not rebellion, it is alignment, a reflection of deep spirituality and the maturity that comes from knowing one's essence. They have walked through the silence long enough to realize that their solitude is not a prison, but a sanctuary where they meet their truest self and experience a profound spiritual awakening. Their energy is calm, yet unshakable, for it is not built on ego, but on understanding. When faced with adversity, they do not seek comfort from the crowd. Instead, they turn inward, drawing power from their inner stillness. They know that transformation does not happen in comfort, but through solitude and reflection, where the soul begins to shed its false layers and stand naked in truth. This is the strength that cannot be taught, only discovered. They have learned that spiritual wisdom is not found in external noise, but in the silent whispers of the heart. Through quiet introspection, they begin to understand that life's greatest journey is not outward toward more connections or possessions, but inward toward peace, awareness, and divine presence. Those who possess such inner sovereignty live with psychological maturity that is rare in this world. They are not easily manipulated by trends, gossip, or emotional turbulence because their identity is rooted in something far deeper than their alignment with spirit. This maturity shows up in their ability to remain grounded even when others lose themselves in comparison, judgment, or chaos. They know who they are, and because of that, they cannot be shaken. They no longer depend on external validation to feel worthy. They have already met their worth within. Their solitude has become their teacher, their silence a friend, and their stillness a mirror reflecting the eternal truth that lies beyond fear and desire. In spirituality, this state of being marks the awakening of the soul when one realizes that true freedom is not found in belonging to the world, but in belonging to oneself. They understand that solitude does not mean disconnection, but sacred union with the divine energy that flows through all things. Through spiritual awakening, they come to see that their independence is not loneliness, but liberation. Their calm presence speaks louder than words because it carries the vibration of authenticity, peace, and depth. They move through life gently, with compassion and clarity, not needing to control or prove, simply being. And in that state of being, they embody what Jung called individuation, the full integration of self and spirit, the marriage between human experience and divine wisdom. To stand in one's own light without fear, to walk alone without feeling lost, to choose truth over acceptance, this is the essence of inner sovereignty. It is the highest form of spiritual maturity, where you no longer live to be understood, but to understand, no longer chase love, but become love itself. They have learned that power does not come from control, but from surrender. And peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of awareness. In a world addicted to distraction, their stillness becomes revolutionary, a reminder that the soul's greatest strength lies not in having many around you, but in having yourself fully within you. 5. Introspection and self-awareness. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Those who have few or no friends often embody this truth more deeply than most. They spend long periods in quiet reflection, exploring their inner world, rather than seeking constant distraction in external noise. This solitude becomes a sacred classroom where they begin to understand the language of their soul. In silence, they learn to observe their emotions, question their habits, and recognize the patterns that shape their thoughts and behaviors. Instead of resisting their loneliness, they transform it into self-awareness. And that self-awareness becomes the foundation of their spiritual development. They do not run from their shadows. They face them, integrating their fears, wounds, and hidden desires until they emerge more whole and self-possessed. When you live with fewer social ties, you have the space to listen deeply to yourself, to life, and to the subtle whispers of intuition. You begin to realize that every quiet moment carries a message, and that peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of understanding. This is the essence of true spirituality, not a search for something outside of you, but a return to what has always been within. As you continue this path of introspection, you notice that your values shift. You no longer crave constant company or validation. You crave truth, depth, and resonance. You seek people who see beyond appearances and connect with your essence. And because such souls are rare, your circle naturally becomes smaller, but far more meaningful. This transformation is not always easy. The world often misunderstands solitude as sadness, mistaking introspection for isolation. Yet in truth, it is the opposite. In your stillness, you begin to discover strength and inner power that no one can give or take away. You develop emotional intelligence, empathy, and an ability to stay calm amidst chaos. You stop reacting impulsively and start responding with awareness. The more you know yourself, the less external chaos can disturb your inner peace. This quiet confidence radiates through your energy, changing how you experience life and how life responds to you. As your spiritual development deepens, you start to see solitude not as emptiness, but as richness. It becomes the soil in which wisdom grows. In this sacred silence, your creativity blossoms, your mind clears, and your intuition sharpens. You no longer chase after belonging because you have already found it within yourself. You realize that real companionship begins when you are no longer afraid of being alone. Each silent moment becomes a mirror reflecting your growth. Each breath a reminder that peace was never outside. It was always waiting for you to return home to yourself. Don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights on how deep introspection and self-awareness can transform loneliness into profound spiritual growth and inner peace. 6. Spiritual growth through individualization. The process of individuation, as described by Carl Jung, is not a path for the faint of heart. It is the courageous act of breaking away from the collective to discover the truth of who you are beneath all the noise, expectations, and illusions of the world. Those who often walk alone are not antisocial or broken. They are souls undergoing one of life's most sacred transformations. They are choosing depth over comfort, authenticity over conformity, and silence over superficial noise. Jung once said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that is precisely what solitude allows space for the self to unfold without interference. In the quiet, you begin to meet your real self, stripped of performance and pretense. You realize that being alone is not loneliness. It is a holy space where your soul speaks in a voice the world cannot hear. In solitude, the spiritual awakening begins to take root. You start to see that the absence of people is not a loss, but a clearing and opening that invites divine truth to enter. What feels like emptiness is actually expansion. What feels like detachment is purification. As you walk further into silence, your inner voice grows stronger. You begin to confront your shadows, those hidden aspects of your psyche that you once feared. Jung called this the process of integrating the unconscious, and through it, you reclaim your wholeness. You learn that healing is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. The solitude that once felt heavy now becomes your teacher, your mirror, and your sacred ground for transformation. People with no friends often carry this rare kind of depth because they have spent time exploring the inner world that most avoid. They understand the weight of their emotions, the beauty of stillness, and the power of silence. They are not impressed by appearances or empty validation. They crave truth, meaning, and alignment. They find companionship in books, in art, in nature, and in their connection with the divine. Henry David Thoreau once said, "I never found a companion that was so companionable as solitude," and that wisdom echoes through every soul that walks alone, yet feels deeply connected to everything. As this journey unfolds, you start to see that solitude is not a punishment, but a purification. The more you detach from external noise, the clearer your inner guidance becomes. You develop emotional strength, energetic balance, and spiritual independence. You no longer chase love, you attract it. You no longer seek belonging, you embody it. You no longer fear solitude, you thrive in it. This is the essence of spiritual wisdom. Realizing that wholeness is not found in others, but remembered within yourself. Through solitude, you align with your higher self and begin to live from a place of authenticity and quiet power. You understand that being misunderstood by others is a small price to pay for being understood by your own soul. And so, walking alone becomes not a burden, but a sacred initiation into a deeper, freer, and more conscious version of life itself. 7. Calm presence and energetic strength. They carry an energy that feels like peace in human form. Calm, grounded, and quietly powerful. This presence is not built overnight. It's the result of years spent in solitude, listening rather than escaping, observing rather than reacting. While most people run from silence to drown their thoughts in noise, these individuals step into it to understand themselves more deeply. They have learned that solitude is not loneliness, but a sacred space where the soul reorders itself. It is there, in stillness, that they discover clarity, a knowing that does not shout, but whispers truth. As Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Their spiritual awakening is not dramatic. It's subtle, steady, and profound, like the rising sun illuminating everything it touches. They don't need to control the world, because they've learned to master their inner state. When chaos surrounds them, they remain centered, moving with intention instead of impulse. In every situation, their energy speaks before their words do. It's the kind of serenity that softens tension, quiets anger, and reminds others of their own capacity for peace. This comes from a place of deep self-knowledge, a spirituality that has been lived, not just learned. They understand that to be calm is not to be passive. It is to be rooted, unshaken by external storms. Like the surface of a still lake, their mind reflects the world with accuracy because the waters within are no longer disturbed. They've faced their own darkness, accepted their imperfections, and turned wounds into wisdom. The solitude that once felt like exile became their initiation, a rite of passage into awareness. While others fill the void with distractions, they allow emptiness to speak, and through that silence, they find depth. Their peace is not naive. It's forged through pain, patience, and honest introspection. You can sense their order in the midst of disorder, how they move deliberately, speak sparingly, and radiate understanding without needing to convince anyone. Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." And that truth lives within them. Their quiet strength comes from knowing that life cannot always be controlled, but can always be understood. They have mastered the art of detachment without indifference, staying compassionate without losing themselves. This is the essence of spiritual maturity, to carry both light and shadow without being consumed by either. Their energy does not seek validation, it simply is. And when you stand close to them, your breathing slows, your mind settles, and for a moment, you remember what peace feels like. Such people remind us that real strength doesn't roar, it hums. It's not about dominance, but presence, the silent confidence that comes from alignment with truth. Their calm is contagious because it's authentic, and their spirituality is visible not through ritual, but through how they live, how they listen, how they love. They embody the balance between softness and power, between surrender and self-control. They teach us that peace is not the absence of noise, but the ability to remain whole within it. Their lives whisper a message the world desperately needs to hear: that stillness is not stagnation, and solitude is not emptiness. It is where the soul breathes, expands, and awakens. In that sacred quiet, they find themselves, and through them, others remember how to find their way back to themselves too. If you find this content touching your heart, please consider becoming a member to receive more in-depth lessons and direct support from me. 8. Wisdom earned in silence. Rather than chasing status, popularity, or external validation, people with few or no friends value meaning, growth, and emotional depth. They don't measure life by how many people surround them, but by how deeply they understand themselves. Their wisdom is born not from noise, but from silence, the kind that reveals what words often hide. When they sit alone, they're not escaping the world. They're studying it from within. In solitude, they listen to the quiet voice of their soul, where clarity replaces confusion and spirituality becomes a living experience, not just an idea. This stillness sharpens their awareness, allowing them to see what others overlook. It's in these silent hours that they discover who they truly are and what truly matters. They've learned that the courage to face oneself is far rarer than the ability to entertain others. Many people hide behind relationships, afraid of the mirror that solitude holds up. But those who embrace it walk into their own shadows and find light there. As Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." These individuals have awakened to the truth that real growth happens when you stop performing for the world and start listening to your inner teacher. Every wound becomes wisdom. Every setback, a sacred initiation into deeper understanding. Through their isolation, they refine the art of emotional alchemy, turning pain into purpose, confusion into clarity, and loneliness into spiritual development. They don't see solitude as emptiness, but as a sanctuary. While others chase constant stimulation, they find power in stillness. They know that wisdom doesn't grow in crowds. It grows in quiet reflection. In their company, there's an unspoken calm, a vibration of depth that makes others feel seen without words. Their spirituality is not about rituals or appearances, but about alignment, living with integrity, compassion, and awareness. They've discovered that peace doesn't come from external harmony, but from internal balance, from the acceptance of both light and shadow within themselves. In that acceptance lies liberation. These rare souls understand that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of self. They see through superficiality and are drawn to authenticity, truth, and essence. They've stopped seeking approval and started seeking meaning. Their lives move with intention rather than impulse, purpose rather than performance. When they speak, their words carry weight because they come from reflection, not reaction. Their depth intimidates some and inspires others, for they are mirrors of what most people are afraid to become whole, aware, and free. Their path is not easy, but it is sacred. Every moment alone becomes a step deeper into their awakening. They are living proof that solitude, when embraced, becomes a bridge to the divine, a place where one's heart learns to rest in truth. Their silence is not empty. It's full of life, wisdom, and quiet power. In a world addicted to noise, they remind us that stillness is not isolation, it's evolution. And the ones who master it become the quiet architects of spiritual awakening, carrying a kind of depth that only the brave ever reach. In the end, solitude isn't a flaw. It's often the sacred space where your deepest transformation begins. People with no friends aren't empty. They're full of unseen worlds, quiet wisdom, and a rare kind of depth that only silence can reveal. Remember, your journey inward is not isolation, it's initiation. If this message spoke to your soul, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos on self-discovery and spiritual awakening, the psychology of people that have no friends. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of people that have no friends, not to judge, but to understand and to transform. If you've ever felt invisible in a crowded room, or carried your victories and disappointments alone, this video will help you see the deeper patterns shaping that silence. As you listen, ask yourself, which part of this message speaks to your own journey? And before we go further, share in the comments. Do you believe loneliness can become a turning point for spiritual growth? Your reflection might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. 1. Friendlessness is often circumstantial, not a choice. Friendlessness is often circumstantial rather than a conscious decision, because many people who live without friends never truly chose isolation. Instead, They were shaped by a long chain of emotional wounds, quiet betrayals that broke their trust, subtle rejections that chipped away at their confidence, and repeated social exclusions that made them feel like they were standing on the outside of life looking in. Over time, these experiences do not simply fade. They carve deep grooves into a person's inner world, altering how they perceive others and what they believe they deserve. And slowly, without realizing it, their heart begins to retreat, building a protective shell around itself. In spirituality, this is seen as a point where the soul begins protecting its light by withdrawing from spaces that once felt unsafe. And this withdrawal, though accidental, marks the beginning of a spiritual awakening that forces a person to confront the pain they've carried alone for years. These emotional wounds often create psychological defense mechanisms that feel necessary in the moment, but become invisible cages in the long term. When someone has been betrayed enough times, they begin to scan every new interaction for danger. When someone has been rejected repeatedly, they learn to silence themselves before anyone else can silence them first. When someone grows up feeling ignored or overlooked, they might convince themselves that they are meant to remain unseen, even though every part of their spirit quietly aches to be noticed. These patterns are not signs of weakness, they are signs of survival. Yet the tragedy is that these survival patterns slowly erode a person's ability to build connection. They start believing that relationships bring more pain than warmth, more disappointment than belonging, and therefore begin choosing distance even when a part of them longs for closeness. As Carl Jung said, loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. Many who walk through life without friends live inside this truth every day. Once these defenses settle into the personality, they become deeply ingrained, shaping how a person shows up in every social space. They may appear confident, but keep emotional walls high. They may seem detached, but feel everything intensely beneath the surface. They may smile politely while internally rehearsing every possible mistake they could make. The world often misjudges them, assuming they are cold, antisocial, or uninterested in connection, when in reality, they are simply trying to protect the last untouched parts of their heart. Their spirituality becomes intertwined with their longing, because deep within them lies a quiet desire to reconnect with others, with themselves, and with the world they once withdrew from. This longing is a sign that their soul still remembers what it feels like to belong. As these patterns continue, isolation becomes familiar, almost comfortable, because comfort often comes from what is known, not what is healthy. Yet even in this loneliness, there is a spark, an intuition that whispers that life can be more than emotional survival. This whisper is the beginning of spiritual awakening, a gentle nudge that encourages them to look at their wounds not as permanent truths, but as past experiences that shaped them. When they begin recognizing how these defense mechanisms formed, they also begin the slow journey of unlearning them. They start questioning the beliefs that once kept them trapped. They begin to understand that the walls they built for protection also kept them from love, from friendship, and from the meaningful human experiences their soul was created for. And as awareness grows, compassion grows, with it not only compassion for themselves, but for others who walk through life carrying invisible wounds. Through spirituality, they begin to realize that healing is not a sudden transformation, but a gradual process of learning to trust again, of letting their heart breathe again, and of allowing their spirit to reconnect with the world at its own pace. In this understanding, they discover that friendlessness was never truly a preference. It was a response, a shield, a coping mechanism, and recognizing this truth is the first step toward reclaiming the connections they have always deserved. Have you ever felt like having no friends was more of a circumstance than a choice? If you have, share your experience in the comments so others know they're not alone. If not, comment, "I understand," to show support and help us grow a more compassionate community together. 2. Isolation reshapes the brain and perception. Isolation reshapes you on levels far deeper than you realize. And when you have lived through long stretches of loneliness, not by choice, but by painful circumstances, you can feel how it rewires your mind, your emotions, and even the way your soul meets the world. Chronic aloneness slowly trains the brain to operate without social feedback. And because neuroplasticity is always adapting to your environment, your mind begins to weaken its ability to read facial expressions, emotional tone, or subtle shifts in body language. What once felt natural, understanding people, sensing moods, responding with ease, starts to feel foreign, like a language you used to speak fluently, but now struggle to recall. You withdraw because the world feels overwhelming, but that withdrawal makes everything feel even harder, deepening the loop until the silence around you becomes the silence inside you. This is how isolation quietly changes perception. You stop trusting your instincts in social situations. You overthink conversations, and you assume you are getting it wrong, even when you are not. Yet beneath this psychological reality lies a deeper spiritual dimension that often goes unnoticed. When you live in a long season of solitude, it is not only the mind that reshapes itself, the soul does too. In spirituality, isolation is seen as a transitional space, a place where the old parts of you dissolve so that something new can form. Carl Jung understood this intimately, which is why he wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." If that resonates with you, it is because your inner world has always carried more depth, sensitivity, and complexity than the environments you were placed in. You were not misunderstood because you lacked something. You were misunderstood because the people around you lacked the capacity to recognize what you carried. As a result, your brain adapted to protect you, pulling you inward, teaching you self-reliance, creating a psychological shell around emotions that once flowed freely. But the tragedy is that the same shell meant to protect you also made it harder for you to reconnect later. You start feeling invisible, even in a room full of people. And what used to be simple interactions now require emotional energy you're not sure you have. Your nervous system becomes calibrated to quiet instead of connection, and unfamiliarity starts feeling safer than intimacy. This is the hidden feedback loop of chronic loneliness. You long for connection, but connection feels too heavy. You want closeness, but closeness feels too demanding. You want to be seen, but being seen feels too vulnerable. And yet, because the brain is endlessly adaptable, what has been shaped by isolation can also be reshaped by intention, healing, and spiritual development. The truth is that none of these changes mean you are broken. They mean you adapted to survive. They mean your mind and spirit responded to the environment they were placed in. And they mean you have the power to rewire everything you once lost. The brain can relearn connection, just as it once learned to disconnect. Your heart can relearn trust. Your spirit can relearn openness. And the quiet season you went through, no matter how painful, can become the foundation of a stronger, more conscious, more spiritually developed version of you. 3. Emotional wounds become invisible walls. Emotional wounds that were never acknowledged or healed gradually turn into invisible walls, shaping how you see yourself and how you interpret the world around you. When you have been hurt deeply, whether through betrayal, neglect, humiliation, or abandonment, your mind begins to link vulnerability with danger. So even the smallest moment of openness feels like stepping into a battlefield. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this truth becomes painfully clear when you notice how your old injuries quietly guide the way you respond to people. You are not avoiding connection because you lack the desire for it. You are avoiding it because your nervous system has learned to confuse safety with loneliness and connection with threat. This is why you often misread the world around you. When someone speaks gently to you, you might hear condescension instead of kindness. When someone shows interest in your life, you might interpret it as pity rather than genuine curiosity. When someone offers help, your instinct is to pull away because accepting support once led to disappointment. You become so focused on preventing rejection that you start seeing rejection everywhere, even where it does not exist. And this hypervigilance makes you push people away long before they ever had a chance to get close to you. This behavior doesn't make you cold or difficult. It makes you human, shaped by experiences that once demanded emotional self-protection to survive. Yet as you grow older, these protective mechanisms harden into habits that no longer serve you. This is where spiritual wisdom reveals another layer of truth. Your isolation is often not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of the wounds you've never been taught how to carry. You respond defensively, not because you want to be alone, but because your heart remembers the pain of being misunderstood, dismissed, or betrayed. So you build a wall, thinking it will shield you. But that wall eventually becomes a cage. You begin to keep your victories small, so no one can take them from you. You carry your disappointments alone, so no one can judge you for them. You silence your needs, so no one can reject them. And slowly, without realizing it, you create the very loneliness you're afraid of. It is a painful paradox. You distance yourself to avoid hurt, but the distance becomes its own kind of suffering. Jung's insight helps you understand this cycle more clearly. Your mind is replaying old stories, projecting the past onto the present, making it almost impossible to see people as they truly are. Neutral expressions look unfriendly. Delayed responses feel like abandonment. Simple disagreements feel like personal attacks. Your perception becomes tinted by old pain, and you respond to people based on what happened before, not what is happening now. This creates a life where you long for connection, but fear the cost of it. You crave closeness, but mistrust the path that leads to it. You want to be seen, yet you hide the most vulnerable parts of yourself. because you believe that exposure invites harm. But the truth is that your loneliness does not mean you are unlovable. It means you are still healing. It means the part of you that once needed protection is still trying to protect you today. When you begin to understand your wounds with compassion rather than shame, you finally loosen their grip. And when you start allowing the present moment to guide your responses instead of your past pain, you give yourself permission to experience the connection you have always deserved. Comment below. I am breaking my invisible walls. If you're ready to heal your emotional wounds and step into deeper connection. 4. Rich inner worlds become both sanctuary and trap. Rich inner worlds become both sanctuary and trap for people who move through life without meaningful friendships. Because when you have no one to talk to, your mind turns inward and begins building elaborate internal dialogues that feel safer than the outside world. And this inward focus often becomes a place where spirituality and spiritual awakening quietly take root. You replay past interactions, imagining what you should have said, what you wish you had the courage to express, and your thoughts loop in cycles that feel comforting at first because they allow you to rewrite moments that hurt or confused you. But the longer you stay inside these imagined conversations, the more your mind begins to rely on them as replacements for real human connection. Over time, this internal landscape grows so vivid and so emotionally charged that it becomes the center of your reality, making you believe that thinking deeply is the same as living deeply, even though the two are very different. You fantasize about friendships, picture meaningful bonds, and create scenarios where people see and appreciate your worth. Yet without external feedback to challenge or reshape these thoughts, your self-image becomes fragile and easily distorted. Carl Jung often warned about this inward collapse of perspective when he said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." But awakening requires the balance of both worlds. And without that balance, the imagination becomes a double-edged sword, one that comforts you while quietly cutting into your confidence. As days pass without real interaction, you start to measure yourself by your own assumptions rather than actual experiences. And this leads to a subtle form of social anxiety, where even the smallest encounters feel threatening because your mind has spent so long rehearsing rather than participating. You begin to question your value, wonder if others secretly judge you, and interpret silence as rejection, even if no one has rejected you at all. Your thoughts spiral because there is no external voice to interrupt them, no friend to say, "You're overthinking," no presence to help you return to reality. This is how loneliness slowly shapes identity, not through dramatic events, but through quiet, repetitive patterns of self-reflection that go unchallenged. The sanctuary becomes a prison, not because your inner world is wrong, but because it becomes the only world you trust. You grow so accustomed to navigating emotions alone that stepping outside feels like stepping onto unfamiliar ground, where every word seems risky and every interaction feels like a test. And yet, hidden inside this struggle is the spiritual truth that solitude is not meant to break you, but to awaken you, to teach you how your mind works, how your fears form, and how your imagination can both heal and harm you. When you understand this duality, you begin to realize that your inner world is powerful, but it becomes truly transformative only when you step out of it and allow life, people, and real connection to reshape the parts of you that isolation has narrowed. 5. Their emotional intelligence is high, but it hurts. People who have no close friends often carry an emotional intelligence that is far deeper than they realize. Because when you spend your life observing more than participating, you begin to see the truth behind people's behavior with painful clarity. You can sense when a smile is forced, when someone's tone is hiding irritation, when their words sound friendly, but their energy feels wrong. And this ability to detect inauthenticity makes you quietly step back from connections that feel shallow or performative. You are not avoiding people because you dislike them. You are avoiding situations where you must pretend you do not notice what you clearly see. This sharp emotional perception becomes both a strength and a burden, because the more aware you are, the harder it becomes to settle for friendships that lack sincerity or depth. You crave conversations that are real, relationships where trust is mutual, and people whose presence feels safe. But the world often offers small talk, hidden agendas, and connections built on convenience rather than care, making you hesitate to open up or let anyone in. As you continue navigating this gap between what you feel and what you encounter, your sensitivity pushes you inward, guiding you toward spirituality and spiritual development, where you begin questioning not only who deserves access to you, but also how to honor your inner truth. You learn to listen to your intuition when it warns you about someone's energy, and you grow more protective of your boundaries because you know how draining it is to invest in relationships that do not nourish your soul. This discernment is not coldness. It is wisdom shaped by experience. And even though it sometimes leaves you feeling isolated, it also reflects the depth of your heart. You want genuine connection so deeply that you refuse to settle for anything less. And the loneliness you feel is not an indication of failure. It is a sign that your standards have evolved beyond superficial bonds. Through this journey, you begin to understand powerful lessons. That your emotional intelligence is a gift, not a flaw. That sensing inauthenticity is a form of inner protection. That it is better to wait for people who value honesty and loyalty than to force yourself into circles that drain your spirit. And that learning to be a true friend to yourself is the foundation for every meaningful connection you will create in the future. If this insight on emotional intelligence resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep growing in spiritual wisdom together. 6. Fear of rejection creates a self-fulfilling loop. Fear of rejection can quietly shape your entire inner world. And when you have no friends or feel painfully disconnected from others, this fear becomes even louder, convincing you that something about you is unworthy of closeness. You begin doubting even the most genuine expressions of interest, wondering why someone would want to talk to you or what hidden motive they might have. And this doubt is rarely about the present moment. It is the echo of old wounds, the memories of times when you tried to belong but felt invisible or dismissed. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this spiritual wisdom explains why, you may keep reliving the same painful patterns. Your mind has learned to treat connection as danger, so even kindness can feel suspicious. As this fear grows, it creates an inner conflict where you constantly feel like you are either too much or not enough, pushing you into survival behaviors that once protected you but now limit you. Sometimes you try to please everyone, giving more than you feel, agreeing more than you want, shrinking your true personality so no one sees what you fear is unlovable. Other times, you withdraw completely, avoiding conversations, staying on the edges of social circles, or keeping your deepest thoughts locked inside because letting someone close feels too risky. These reactions may look opposite, but they are both driven by the same silent whisper inside you. If they see the real me, they will leave. And that whisper becomes the engine of a painful loop that reinforces itself over time. The heartbreaking part is that this protective loop becomes a self-fulfilling pattern. You expect rejection, so you behave in ways that make connection harder. And when relationships fail to grow, you use that as proof that your fears were right. You tell yourself, "See, no one wants me," without realizing that it was fear, not your worth, shaping the outcome. From a psychological and spiritual wisdom perspective, this is not life punishing you. It is life mirroring back the places where you are still hurting, inviting you to finally see your unconscious beliefs instead of letting them quietly run your life. As the famous saying goes, we accept the love we think we deserve. And if you secretly believe you are unworthy of stable, loyal friendships, you will either cling to the wrong people, push away the right ones, or never allow anyone close enough to change your mind. Carl Jung's teachings guide you to meet these wounded parts within yourself, not to judge them or suppress them, but to understand how they learn to survive and why they still hold on so tightly. When you begin to recognize that your fear of rejection is an old survival response rather than a reflection of your true value, everything starts to shift. You can slowly practice receiving kindness without instantly questioning it, allowing yourself to say, "I am learning to trust genuine care." You can show small pieces of your true personality instead of hiding behind a mask of perfection or silence. You can let yourself stay present in conversations rather than disappearing at the first sign of vulnerability. These tiny, gentle steps signal to your nervous system that connection can be safe again, and they break the loop, not through force, but through awareness and compassion. The truth is, you were never too much, and you were never not enough. You were simply protecting yourself in the only way you knew how. As your relationship with yourself softens, as your spiritual wisdom deepens, and as your inner beliefs heal, you naturally begin drawing in people who value your authenticity, not your performance. And slowly, connection stops feeling like a battlefield and starts feeling like a place where you can finally breathe and be fully, beautifully yourself. 7. Solitude offers growth, but also social atrophy. Solitude offers growth, but it also quietly reshapes the mind in ways most people never notice. Because time alone can feel like a sanctuary where you finally hear your own thoughts without interruption, where your intuition speaks louder, where your creativity deepens, and where spirituality begins to expand in ways that spark spiritual awakening. When you pull away from the noise of the world, you begin to recognize patterns within yourself that you use to ignore your coping mechanisms, your emotional triggers, your hidden fears, and the dreams you buried to fit into other people's expectations. In this silence, you gain a clearer sense of who you are beyond your roles, your social image, and your past experiences. You start becoming more self-sufficient, more thoughtful, and more aware of your inner landscape. And that inner awareness becomes a kind of internal compass, guiding you toward deeper understanding and emotional maturity. Jung understood this well because he believed that solitude invites you into the depths of your unconscious, where true transformation begins. Yet what makes solitude powerful is also what makes it dangerous. The same silence that strengthens your inner world can slowly cause your social instincts to fade, as if unused parts of your personality begin to rust from lack of interaction. The longer you stay alone, the more overwhelming it feels to re-enter social spaces. Simple conversations begin to require more mental effort, group settings feel overstimulating, and even small talk becomes emotionally exhausting. What originally served as self-protection begins to harden into self-isolation, and the boundaries you built to keep yourself safe turn into walls that keep others out. Over time, anxiety subtly creeps in, not because you dislike people, but because your social muscles have weakened, just like any skill that hasn't been used in too long. You begin overthinking every interaction, replaying your words, analyzing people's reactions, and feeling drained by situations that once felt normal. As this cycle deepens, solitude stops being a choice and starts becoming a psychological prison. You tell yourself that you prefer being alone, but underneath that narrative lies a quiet fear of rejection, misunderstanding, or emotional overstimulation. Crowded rooms make you feel invisible. And even when you want connection, you hesitate because you fear saying the wrong thing, feeling out of place, or being judged. You celebrate your victories alone, carry your disappointments in silence, and convince yourself that no one would truly understand you anyway. This emotional withdrawal reinforces itself until reaching out feels unnatural. And even when a part of you craves closeness, the habits of isolation pull you back into your inner world. Yet none of this means you are broken. It simply means you spent too long surviving instead of connecting. Solitude gave you wisdom, depth, and self-awareness, but it also left your social instincts asleep, waiting for you to awaken them again. The path out is not about forcing yourself into the world. It is about slowly reminding your mind how to trust, how to express, how to belong, and how to let others see you without fear. In this way, the journey through solitude becomes another step in your ongoing spiritual awakening, teaching you that growth happens both within and alongside others, and that the heart heals not only in silence, but also in the courage to return to connection. If this insight on solitude and growth resonates with you, leave a like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss content that supports your inner evolution. Comment below, "I choose growth even in my solitude." 8. They crave deep connection, not just company. They crave deep connection, not just company, because people who walk through life without friends are not avoiding others out of coldness, but out of a longing so deep it scares them. You want soul-level friendship, not empty conversations or social performances. And you're tired of spaces where you have to shrink, pretend, or hide your inner world. You want someone who understands the way your mind works, someone who listens without judgment, someone who sees the truth beneath your silence. Yet your desire for profound connection often becomes the very thing that keeps you alone. You reject small talk because it feels shallow, not realizing that even the deepest relationships are built one simple moment at a time. You avoid casual invitations because they feel meaningless, forgetting that trust is not something that appears fully formed. It is something that grows slowly, like a seed watered through shared laughter, brief conversations, and small acts of kindness. Your depth is your strength, but it is also the wall that blocks others from entering your life. Because you want people to meet you at the bottom of the ocean without first letting them wade through the shallow water. This tension often comes from old wounds, times when you opened your heart and it was dismissed, misunderstood, or broken, and now your nervous system treats every new person as a potential threat. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is exactly what happens when you think, "I just don't fit in," or "people never stay," without realizing the past is pulling the strings. You appear independent and self-contained, but inside, you want to be chosen, understood, and held in a space where your sensitivity is not a burden. This is where spirituality and spiritual development come in. Because the more you understand yourself on a soul level, the more you see that your longing is not weakness. It is a sign of emotional intelligence and inner truth. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is sacred. Your depth is not a curse, it is your compass. But when that depth becomes a wall, it blocks the very connection your soul is craving. You are not meant to force yourself into places that require you to wear a mask, nor are you meant to isolate yourself until the perfect person magically appears. The real path lies in balance, letting small connections exist without dismissing them, allowing people to know you gradually, and giving yourself permission to be imperfect as you open up. When someone reaches out, you don't need to give them your entire soul. Just give them a moment of presence. When a conversation feels simple or ordinary, don't assume it's meaningless. Sometimes the most profound relationships begin with a single, ordinary moment. And when fear tells you to pull away, remind yourself that not every person is your past. Small steps matter. Slow trust is still trust. Depth can coexist with gentleness. Your soul is not looking for a crowd. It is looking for resonance. And when you lower the wall just enough for the right people to walk through, you'll discover that what you have been searching for has been searching for you too. In the end, the psychology of people who have no friends is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of depth. As Carl Jung reminds us, the inner world shapes everything we experience on the outside, and sometimes isolation is the very place where transformation begins. If this message from spiritual wisdom has helped you understand yourself or someone you care about, take a moment to honor that insight. And if you'd like to continue exploring the hidden layers of the mind and spirit, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into deeper understanding